Hi, students. Good afternoon, teachers, parents, students that are joining. Welcome to our second season of Are You Ready? This season, our topic is Be Entrepreneurial, and we are joined in partnership with Junior Achievement of Southwest Florida. So I will introduce Danielle Freeman. She is the education coordinator for Junior Achievement. So thank you so much, Danielle.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. I am Danielle, and I am with Junior Achievement. Junior Achievement is an organization that is over 100 years old. We are worldwide, and we focus on financial literacy, work readiness, and entrepreneurship skills. And today, I would like to introduce our fantastic volunteer, Jeffrey Egan. Jeffrey has devoted his entire career to business, nonprofits, government agencies, healthcare institutions, airports, industrial developmental projects, and he is the co-founder of 3 equipment financial companies with a focus on financing medical equipment needs for physicians and medical. Jeff was also the director of a liberal arts college where he taught finance and entrepreneurship, and he was a 20-year trustee for a children's hospital, a longtime sailor, and a longtime youth volunteer. So, Jeffrey, thank you for being here today.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, students. Welcome to our second session. Just to recap a little bit about what we talked about last week was developing a mindset. How do entrepreneurs think? What is entrepreneurship? And I think we concluded that entrepreneurship is really about problem solving. It may be solving a commercial problem that has the potential to be a business. We talked about meaning money comes in, money goes out, more money comes in than goes out. Or it could be inside an organization that you're already working for, where you just become a problem solver because of the way you look at the world. It also could be social entrepreneurship, where you don't really have a client that you're trying to solve a problem for, but rather some social need in your community that you're looking for. We talked a little bit about why you start businesses, and let's focus on that part of it. It's either to create a job for yourself, where you're employing yourself and your skill, and that could be making beads, making cookies, practicing law, being a dentist is a one-person job. Now, you probably have some tech and a secretary working for you, but it's one location. Or it could be developing a lifestyle change for you. The dentist may acquire multiple dental practices, bring in young dentists to practice under him, have multiple locations. Or it could be the generation of wealth, where you have thousands of customers and you have many locations. It could be hundreds, it could be all over the world. So it's a matter of why you do this that we talked about. We did mention that doing it to make yourself a lot of money is not a particularly good goal, because you get up in the making of money and not get caught up in what it takes to actually start a business and run it successfully. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes getting over disappointment. But if you do, it makes your life a whole lot fuller. Let's call it that way, fuller, whatever that means. So today we're going to talk a lot more about the characteristics of that mindset. And I'm going to, do you want to bring up the slide, Kelly? Kelly's giving me a thumbs up there. We're doing this as a team effort. The other thing that we talked about a lot in that session was that while the word entrepreneur suggests that a single person, very few people do this alone. And I noticed in this morning's Naples Daily News, where they have on this date in such a year, on this date in 1965, Bill Gates founded Microsoft in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But it didn't say, and Bill Gates is the one that you always see. Microsoft, Bill Gates, Microsoft. What you don't usually hear about is the person that we founded Microsoft with, Paul Allen. And he was actually mentioned in the birthday. It said Bill Gates and Paul Allen founded Microsoft. Often it's the combination of two different personalities. We talked about what your strength is and what your, rather than calling it a weakness, let's call it what you need to work on part of it is. And one of the secrets is in successful business, entrepreneurship, social, is finding yourself a partner that complements your skills. If you're strong on the marketing, you're so marketing whiz, you love to make phone calls. We call it dialing for dollars. You just love to do that, but you hate with a passion. I know your mother says you shouldn't hate things, but you really hate doing the paperwork. Find yourself a partner that loves to do the paperwork and really doesn't like to pick up the 500-pound telephone and make telephone calls to potential customers. It's a good combination where you complement each other's skills, and rather than having the same kind of skills. So assessing entrepreneurial potential today is applying those characteristics to yourself. Please remember, this does not define you. You're a whole person. We all have things that we're particularly good at, strong at, and other things that we're not quite so good at or strong at. And those are the need to work ons. The point of today's lesson is to talk about what those are honestly with yourself. You'll be doing the evaluation. We won't be looking at them, but it's to point out to you where you may need to do some work and where you may need to spend more time. So why don't we just move forward with that? Distinguishing entrepreneurial characteristics. There's a bunch of people working around the table. The other thing that we mentioned last week was that, again, that this is not something that you typically do alone. You need feedback from your customers. You need feedback from other people. You have to be open-minded to what they say, even if what they say is, gee, this is sort of a goofy idea, but what if you changed this to that, and maybe it would make some more sense. Okay, next. So after completing the learning topic today, you will be able to analyze on yourself the characteristics of an entrepreneurial mindset. You can also practice it on other people. This is not to criticize them, it's to critique them. That's a very significant distinguishing between the word criticize and critique. Critique is to be honest and forthright and fair, and not mean-spirited about something. So that's what we're going to do today. Next. Characterization. Have you ever studied an author's use of characterization in a short story or a novel? Meaning how they develop the person's character. We also talked last week about consistency, that I'm a believer that people's characterizations, the character that they portray is consistent. If you are a friendly, outgoing, helpful person in your family, then you probably are with your friends, you probably are in school, you probably are in your work environment, and you should be. If you're a person who is sort of takes a negative view on life, and that's just an observation, not a criticism, that's a critique, then you probably do that in all the other aspects of your life. So if you ever think about one of the favorite stories and one of the favorite novels that you've read, and think about the characterization of someone or some people in that. Next. So characteristic of an entrepreneurial mindset, if you read an entrepreneurial book, were that entrepreneurs tend to be. This list is not all inclusive. It's not exclusive. So you may not be any one of these. You may not be most of them. I talked last week about when I look at some of these, critical thinker, persevere, self-confident, I can think of a number of entrepreneurs that miss on a good 2 or 3, maybe even 4 of those. But what happened is they probably had somebody that was by their side, filling in where they were weak, and they weren't, and the other person was particularly strong. So characteristics of an entrepreneurial mindset are that they're adaptable, decisive, creative, they're problem solvers. That's probably should be number 1. They're critical thinkers. Again, critical meaning that they make valid assumptions and decisions and fact-finding about particular problems. They're persevering, they have grit, they can get knocked down and they'll come right back again. They're reasonable risk takers. They evaluate risk. What's at risk? What's the likelihood this is going to work out well? What's the likelihood it's going to work out badly? And they go ahead and make that decision in risk taking by evaluating what can go wrong. Let me move this up a little bit. I'm a glass half full person. When there's that little story vignette about how do you view a glass with water in it, where it's at the halfway mark. Do you view it as half full or half empty? That's just two different mindsets. I'm a person who tends to look at the glass as half full. However, I'm also willing to say, if I were to look at the glass as half empty, why do I do that? What are the risks that I'm afraid are going to happen? And what's the likelihood that they're going to happen? And if they do happen, how bad can it get? And then I make my decisions. And they're self-confident. Self-confident is sort of that glass half full. Next. So recognizing entrepreneurial characteristics. We're going to go through 4 scenarios, and we're going to read them, and then I'm going to ask you to list what you think the characteristics of each entrepreneur is displaying. Next. Profile 1. I'm sneaking a little closer so I can read this. Profile 1, Eldritch Games. When I started Eldritch Games, I knew there was a ton of competition in the industry. Tabletop gaming was extremely popular. There were even movies and TV shows prominently featuring gaming. People were making entire careers out of streaming videos of themselves playing games with their friends on sites like YouTube. But for every new gaming company that created a hit game, there were dozens, I would suggest hundreds, that failed without ever launching a single product. Despite all of that, I believed in the story I was trying to tell with my first game. So I rolled the dice, both literally and figuratively. I hope you understand. Literally means it's a game that literally has dice in it. And figuratively, rolling the dice is a figure of speech. When starting my own company. Now, 5 years and 6 successful games later, I can safely say that everything has paid off for me. So what I'd like you to do is to go through that reading, and I guess did they have a worksheet, Kelly? I don't have it in front of me. Do they have this worksheet in front of them where they could circle the keywords? Or maybe on a piece of paper, highlight where you think that there were where there were entrepreneurial characteristics. And why don't I give you, I'm not sure how much time we're supposed to do on this. We're going to say 2 minutes. Why don't we give you 2 minutes on this and jot down or note where you think the entrepreneurial characteristics were, and I'm going to do the same thing. Whoops. Did I go? Oh, I see. There we go. So there's the thing. So so you can use those are the words.
You do have access to this if you click on the link that I posted in the chat.
Okay.
Get to this page.
Okay. So if you could take me back to, because they have this in front of them, correct?
The student, yes, they have access
Okay, if
to
you
it as well.
go back to the storyline, because I've got to do this myself.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, but I've got about 15 seconds to wrap that up. And we'll see whether we want to, students, there's an answer. Is there an answer there? Risk taker, self-confident. Okay. So the words that I wrote down, unless students, if you want to, if Ambrose, if you're connecting by audio, if you want to speak up and mention what you thought were some of the characteristics that were displayed there, I'd be more than happy to hear them. Nope, I guess everybody's on mute. So I'll give you mine. I jotted these words down reading this. There was tons of opportunity, but he was cautious about it, meaning he was evaluating the opportunity, but also a little cautious about it. He had done enough analysis. He knew there was a big market, TV shows, hours of people spending time. Again, he expressed some caution because of the people who had tried to do this, and not so he was aware of what was going on in the industry. Very few people start businesses that they're brand new to. They start businesses in an industry where they're already working. They may be bussing tables someplace, but they've seen the opportunity to start a catering business, to start a catering service worker business. All they're doing is maintaining a list of people who are really good serving at catering events, and they hire them out. He started with one. He didn't try and solve the whole problem. He literally rolled the dice. He was making a risk decision. He followed what I think probably was a fail early. If you're going to fail, and again, reminding you that last week we talked about my use of the word failure. Failure is when you do something and don't achieve your objective and you don't learn anything. He was willing to make a chance and learn. So he rolled the dice. He got one game successful, but it didn't say, oh, it does say it's my first game. So he was lucky. His first game caught on, and he was then able to take that success and go on and develop multiple games. So good for him. He was willing to jump in with both feet. I hope he was working for somebody else and doing this at night. So let's try the next one. So he's a risk taker and self-confident. Pure energy. I always knew I wanted to run a tech company that transformed electronic devices. When I founded Pure Energy, I channeled my biggest frustration with modern gadgets into a solution: longer battery life. I read a lot of reviews of new phones, tablets, or other devices when they came out. Battery life was always a major customer focus and always provided challenges. I did research on every battery type in the market to find out which had the most power capabilities. I studied scientific and performance data and user reviews to find out where the deficiencies were. 2 years later, with many ups and downs, my engineering partner and I have developed a new battery prototype. We are ready to bring it to test markets. This product could revolutionize the electronic device market. So let's do the same thing. Let's go through here and jot down what you think of these. So I'm going to start right now. So we'll give it 2 minutes. Dream. Yeah, which one of these applied to her? I can't remember her name now. It's just pure energy. Yeah, about another 30 seconds on that one. What makes her entrepreneurial? What are the actions, thoughts, heck, dreams, but mostly actions that she's taken to sort of demonstrate to her, one, to herself, two, to other people. She's had to make a lot of contacts with people over the last 2 years. Okay, with that, here are my words that I came up with. Dream, focus. She was laser focused on technology. And even within technology, she was laser focused on battery life. She did a lot of research, reading research. She studied a lot of material and what she said, scientific and performance data and user reviews. She found herself an engineering partner because the saying sometimes goes, she knew enough to be dangerous, meaning she knew enough about batteries and battery life and all those characteristics to get herself into the business space, but she really didn't understand the true technology. So she found herself an engineering partner, and they developed, here's a hot word, prototype that we're going to talk about in a couple of weeks. And so they went through the prototype. Those are some of the words that we're going to talk about in a couple of weeks. Is ideate. She thought about things, ideas. She then took it to the next step of actually designing something. She built a prototype. No doubt in this case, it probably is a real battery, but it's probably not as small as it's going to need to be. But she understood with her partner enough about the technology of batteries to figure out where the science is. In a sense, that's what Elon Musk did with lithium ion batteries. He was the person that's really, that science probably existed with somebody else. I'm not so sure that Elon Musk was a developer of lithium ion technology, but he took it to the next level where it could be applied to automobiles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's go to the answer on that one.
Jeff, we had one student wrote in the chat that they said the word was problem solver too.
Problem solver, excellent. Yeah, problem solver. She's defined the problem. She's gone in and studied it and learned everything that she possibly could. Facts, not what she thought. I was really impressed with the amount of research that she did, rather than being casual and rather being short term. I want to tell you, 2 years is a lot of time. Now, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. So one of the issues with, and then here's a side story here about cell phones after cell phones came out. By the way, the first cell phone call was made in I think it was 1972, where somebody from Motorola made a telephone call standing outside the building in New York City, made a telephone call to AT&T headquarters. And they said, and the person answered the telephone, the head of technology at AT&T answered the telephone. And they said, well, it's Jeff Aiken. He said, oh, where are you calling from? And he said, outside your building. It was the first cell phone call. And the reason that he made the call from Motorola to AT&T is because AT&T had turned down the idea. They didn't think cell phones would ever catch on. So they developed a cell phone, and cell phones work with cells. So that's why you see the cell towers. And the cell towers go about 2.5 miles. So if you're more than 2.5 miles away from a cell, it doesn't work. So Motorola also said, well, we're going to develop the world phone that will operate off of satellites. Oh, great idea. They spent $15 billion developing the cell phone that would work anywhere in the world as long as it was outside. So it'll work at the top of Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa or Mount Everest in Nepal, but it won't work inside a building. It won't work inside an elevator like a cell phone will. So while they did all this, and they spent years and years developing this. So that's one story about where all this work sometimes doesn't work out. So why don't we do the next one? Global growth. I started global growth. Oh, I got a dog in the background. Sorry about that. I started Global Growth, a staffing and HR services company in 2014, after spending almost a decade at a business that did basically the same thing. That company was a consulting firm for small businesses that needed help with staff recruitment and human resources services. I decided that I would provide those same services to international clients. I quickly found out that my company's model worked for them because they were bigger, established companies. As a startup, my business tried to cover too broad a market. I almost went bankrupt. I had to shift resources to the areas of the business that were prospering. I went from offering general staffing services to specializing in technical recruiting for high-level IT positions in international locations. I adjusted my whole approach, took a business that almost went belly up and made it extremely profitable. Okay, so let's start the 2 minutes and write down the words, write down what you think are the key words in here. Just closing up the door, dog, yeah. Okay, but how about another 30 seconds on that one? Okay, what I saw here was somebody who was very knowledgeable about a particular business, the staffing business, and learned from that, saw a narrow piece of that, because this business, as I understanding it, was for small businesses that needed help, and it was for, if you will, local, I'm going to guess probably regional customers. They probably weren't all over the United States. They were probably in, New England or the Midwest or the West Coast. He saw an opportunity. I'm going to guess that he probably offered this to the company first. That's a tough one to call. I am not a lawyer. I hung around with lawyers an awful lot, so I'm not going to practice law. I don't know what you always, when you have an idea and you're working for somebody else, if you don't offer it to them and then you go out and do it on your own, you might get sued for misappropriation of customer information. Now he's going after a totally different customer base, but he may very well have used systems, I'll call them systems, the database you used, how you categorized your customers, how you went about the problem solving, how you recruited people, all that kind of stuff is intellectual property. It's not a computer, it's not a desk. It's probably in a manual. So if you made a copy of that manual, it's getting a little dicey there. But if you offer the opportunity for the idea to that company, what they see is an opportunity for them to expand their business. They've just made a, if they give you the idea and say, go, yes, I mean, God bless you, go do it. We have no interest in being in that market. But what they're hoping is the old company, I'll call it, is hoping that one of their customers will really grow rapidly and then need international support. And who do you think they're going to come to? They're going to come to you. So I would, that's what I saw. He saw a problem at the parent company and decided to go out on his own. He probably bit off what I call tried to eat the whole elephant. He was probably trying to do a broad range of human resource skills, a lot of different kind of skills inside a company where you need one person or two people in a small business. And he was trying to apply that internationally where they were probably much, much bigger companies. And he walked right up to the edge of chapter 11 That's one of the 2 chapters that you're allowed to, that's what they're called, chapters, when you file for bankruptcy. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going out of business. It means that you need to be protected from your creditors, the people who you owe money to. And that can range from a bank to FedEx, to UPS, to your cleaning service, hopefully not to employees. That's when you draw the line, when you can no longer write a check to your employees for their pay. That's when you're in Chapter 11 and you plead to the court, please protect me from my enemies. And the court says, fine. All you creditors, stop bugging Jeff. He's now protected by the court, and we're going to try and work this out so that he can stay in business, and you may be owed $500 and you're going to get $250, or you're going to get $125, or you're going to get nothing in order to keep me in business. So he walked all the way up to that doorway and was able to save the company. And then he did something very, very smart. He adapted and he said, I've tried to eat an elephant here. I can't do that. I've got to try something. And so he went, rather than in general staffing, he says, I specialized in technical recruiting, high level, meaning C-level, chief IT officer, not an IT manager, but a chief IT manager in international. So he's chopped this up into 3 segments: technical, high level, and international. And he's been able to adjust to the whole, and now he's back on track and he's extremely profitable. So let's see what his answer says.
We had a student that said decisive and adaptable.
Oh, decisive. I like that word. Yeah, he was decisive. Now, his first decision may not have been the best, the most prudent, the wisest. It may not have been. He could have been successful doing that. So I can't, it's hard for me to judge and say it was wrong. It wasn't wrong. He made a decision. He had a reason for making that decision. It was risky, let's put it that way. But he made that decision and then he went for it. Once he had committed, I told the story last week for some of you who I know were here last week about not getting diverted. Now, he tried to be all things to all people on an international basis. But if somebody had come to him who was a national client, he should have said, no, I'm not doing that. Often when you leave a company and you have a fair amount of skill, you're often bound by what are called non-compete agreements. You have a lot of knowledge about business and their systems, their manuals, how they process things, and who all their customers were. When you leave a company at some level, your former employer will ask you to sign a non-compete in exchange for any monies that you are owed and a kind word, not slamming you in the industry. But what that non-compete says is you may not call any of my customers and you may not compete in the same business. That's particularly true if you were an owner of the business. So the business that you couldn't compete in would be the consulting firm for small businesses that needed help with staff recruitment and human resources services, meaning payroll, health benefits, all that kind of stuff. So you're not allowed to be in that business, but that doesn't say, it says nothing about international. It says nothing about actually going out and recruiting and being, it sounds like at this level, he's what's called a headhunter. It's not a particularly nice term, but it's the term that they use for people who operate at the really high level of recruiting because they're looking for heads to deliver to their client of somebody that's really skilled. So adaptable and decisive. I like those 2 words, whoever put those up. Thank you. And how about the next one? Okay, Whimsy Productions. Early in my career, I worked on several film and television productions in a variety of genres and styles. Genres meaning comedy, serious, character development, mysteries, etc. That's what genre means. I heard clients gripe time and time again that it was nearly impossible to find one talent production group to handle their diversified needs. Each production group worked in their own specialized niche. 3 years ago, I started Whimsy Productions to offer customers a wide range of different options I spent time talking to a lot of colleagues in the industry to get tips on best practices. I also spent tons of time with potential clients, talking to them about what they'd like to see in a one-stop production shop. I wanted anything I produced, from commercial or a sitcom to a music video or horror film, to get equal artistic vision and superior customer service. Then I took to the next level. I produced a catalog of options for my clients that provided an a la carte list of services where they could choose shooting options, talent, locations, etc. My clients felt they were an active voice and were invested in the entire process. Again, let's try 3 minutes or a couple minutes on that and see what you can come up with. Okay, about another 30 seconds. Anything in particular from the students they want to put on the chat board? Okay, here's what I saw. I saw early in my career, I saw this is a person who's been in the industry. He's observed not only what the company that she was working for was doing, but what other people were doing, and saw a void, saw what other people were missing. So while her focus is it's specific, she wanted to offer a broad range of services. It was narrow in the sense that it was something that no one else was doing or few other people were doing. So she obviously thought about this a long time, 3 years. I started Whimsy to offer customers a wide range of different options, talking to colleagues in the industry as to what are best practices. So that's a term that you could look up on your own, but it's a term from that's fairly not that old, but reasonably new. Best practices means you look at all the people in an industry and which companies are doing this the best and how do they do it, and you are allowed to adopt that. Now, you can't go in and take their manuals and all that, but you can observe them, listen to them. If they really are best practices, there's probably on the speaking tour at industry shows. You can really learn a lot about an industry by going to the shows. And I want to tell you, there are shows for everything. I had a client who was in the amusement park business. And so I went to the industry show in Orlando, Florida, for the American Association of Amusement Parks and Rides, whatever that acronym is. And it went from people who actually design and make rides, and they had small rides set up inside the convention hall, all the way down. And you can learn an awful lot at a show if you ever go to one, have the opportunity, and go if you can. Is there all the big vendors are in the middle of all the interesting stuff is around the outside. And around the outside of the amusement park show were people who their only business was making bolts and washers and nuts that cannot fail. So if you go to a hardware store at Home Depot or Ace Hardware and you buy a bolt, guaranteed it's going to break at some level. Okay. it's got a design. You could probably find what the design strength is, but it's going to break, and it's going to break fairly early. In the amusement park business, when you've got a cart full of people whirling around, that bolt cannot fail. It cannot fail. And so that's what this business was, what I call can't fail bolts. So fascinating. So she also then built prototypes. I'm assuming that what she says she built here, they developed a catalog, is probably a visual catalog of genres and styles, where in 2 minutes she can show and say, this is how I would portray a horror movie. This is how I would portray a love story. And they would have characters. So she's invested a lot of money in this, but it allows her customers to actually see and hear and almost touch what she's trying to do with her quote prototype. And I mentioned best practices. One of the things that I would mention that was from the prior one that I didn't get to in my notes, where they were talking about specialization with hiring people. I know someone in my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio, who's a number of people who were in different practices. One of the practices was part-time physicians. So you're a hospital or a medical practice that has a specialization, or it could be general. And for some reason, you have a physician who is leaving temporarily. They're going to Doctors Without Borders for 6 months. It's a woman who has a pregnancy and she's leaving for 6 months. You have a void, but it's a temporary void. And so you need a physician with specific skills. It's a Latin term, it's called locum tenens. And there are firms that's all they do, is they have a pool of people who that's all they want to do. They don't want to work for somebody full time. They want to be locum tenens. They want to move all over the country. They want to do it for 6 months or 9 months or 3 months, and that's all they do. I also know someone whose business was hiring union employees. When a company that is a union shop hires people in certain job categories, they have to belong to the union. Once they belong to the union and they're an employee there, they're an employee there. There is no, well, we only need you for 6 months. We only need you for 3 months. We only need you for a year and then let you go. So this person, what he did was he hired the union workers, and they were blue collar workers. They were factory workers, machinists and welders and all that kind of stuff. So that when they walked in the door, and what he did was, if they were going to get paid $50 an hour by the company, he charged them out at 65. They worked for the 50. He got the 55 for placing them. And those numbers could be wrong. I don't know. But my point is that it allowed the employing company to stick to its union belief and hire only union employees. But when that particular job was done, so long, I no longer need you. And he went back on the payroll of for lack of a better term, the locum tenens company. So there are a lot of opportunities out there. So I like this one. What do our students say?
I don't see anything this time.
Okay, they can't see the answer. Okay, well, I think you got the picture. This was pretty consistent. They're creative. It's obviously a creative person with a creative idea. You would sort of expect that. You wouldn't expect a person that's in a creative industry to be, I'll call it negative, closed-minded, et cetera, et cetera. So let's go to the next one. See what we got. Oops, it fell asleep on us. Whimsy Productions.
It's thinking.
It's thinking. We need a full service production company. Yeah, maybe do it that way.
Well, it says next is the wrap up, and then we move into the entrepreneurial mindset inventory,
Inventory.
which is in their Google Drive.
Okay, so students, why don't you go to the Google Drive and pull up the inventory.
So you will click on that Google link that I sent in the chat, and then where you see session 2, you'll go to Mindset Inventory. And I'm going to try to restart this.
Okay, yeah, maybe we need to shut it down and go back to the. So when we get to the mindset, we're going back to the same general words. And what I want to just go over them briefly, because then what you're going to do is you're going to go down the list of characteristics and do a little self-evaluation. Be honest. Don't be too hard on yourself, but be honest. There we go. So entrepreneurs can exhibit some, sometimes all, sometimes few of the characteristics. Practicing entrepreneurial characteristics in your day-to-day experience will help develop your inner entrepreneur. So this is not something you only do. It isn't a hat that you put on when you're sitting at your desk saying, today I'm going to work on my business model. It's something that you have to do and all the time. And even catch yourself saying, wait a minute, how should I be looking at this? Is this a problem or is this an opportunity? Next. Entrepreneurial mindset inventory. After completing this learning topic, you will be able to evaluate personal entrepreneurial strengths and areas for refinement using an entrepreneurial potential self-assessment. So here we go. Has anyone ever taken a baseline test, which means what is your knowledge about a particular subject? And then you take that before you ever take the class. So you take a class on trigonometry and you take a test at the beginning and you probably don't do very well at it because you've never had trigonometry before. So it's a way to measure your learning from the baseline test. You now take the trigonometry course, and then you take the same test at the end, and you should do pretty well on it, maybe even ace it. And what the purpose is to say, does the teaching really make a difference? And it should make a difference. You should go from baseline, not a lot of knowledge about trigonometry, to post-course, you have a fair amount of knowledge, okay? So here are the characteristics of an entrepreneurial mindset. Adaptable, we saw that in the ability to start down one path and then switch midstream and try something else. Decisive, make a decision on the best facts that you have. One of the great generals in the Civil War was a general called McClellan, and he was a great planner. He was also a classmate of Robert E. Lee's. Robert E. Lee and McClellan went to West Point. Most of the officers in the Civil War for the South went to West Point. They may have gone to the Citadel, but they went. Actually, I think the Citadel may be post-World War or post-Civil War. They knew each other's characteristics. Well, Lee, who was decisive, knew that McClellan, while a great planner, was not decisive. He would plan and plan and plan and get more facts and plan some more. And so Lee used that advantage, knowing that McClellan was back in Washington, planning and planning and planning to develop his own campaign. Creative, we saw that in a number of cases where you saw an opportunity inside a company where you were presently working to fill a void that the parent company really wasn't interested in. Problem solver, what do I need to do? And not to do it alone, both critical thinking and problem solving, not to do it alone. All of those stories were about people who went out and talked to other people in the industry, customers, people who could have been competitors to them, could have been future employees to them. Maybe that's why the people listen to them. Persevering, even to the point of getting right up where the company was going to go under. He persevered through that and made it. Risk takers, evaluating risks appropriately. What's the downside? How bad could this possibly be? Not just how good could this possibly be? and certainly self-confident. Plus, next one. So the entrepreneur, let's take about 10 minutes on that one. Actually, how about 5 minutes on that one? Because we're getting down to 5 minutes, 10 minutes to 5. Take about 5 minutes, read each statement, and then select the best answer for you. They're on a scale of 1 to 4, totally disagree, somewhat disagree, somewhat agree, totally agree. And again, try to be honest, because this is for your benefit. You're not to show it to anybody else. It's not a criticism, it's a critique. So why don't you go ahead and do that, and we'll pick up in about 4 minutes. Just took a look at all those categories and give yourself a score. And does that have an evaluation? Does it overall score? I'm not sure how this scores. I'm not sure how the scoring works. Does it show the students how to score so that if you're having one in aptitude, you put it someplace? I don't know.
I don't know if it did. I can send them in the chat. I'll send them this link as well.
Yeah, send that link
Is
to
what's
them so
actually listed.
they can actually score it. Yeah, there are no right or wrong answers in here. There's only self-evaluation. And believe me, this is not something that is a student. Well, it is a student, as long as we all consider ourselves students all the time. This is not a high school student tool. This is something that I am constantly aware of. Oh, I see how these are scored. Yeah. And then they'll pick up certain categories and it'll give them a score. So that, yeah, so they can use that self-evaluation. Okay, so how are we doing? We in pretty good shape doing our scores on those? And Kelly is going to send you the template to actually score those, and it'll help you decide where you are, what you might feel comfortable with, skills that you already have and are sort of firmly embedded in you, and areas that need work. That's all this is intended to do, is to show you where you might need work. And when you read these, you think about the opening statements. I've dreamt about this. I was at my career for 3 years, and then I thought about this. Okay, so why don't we go to the next one, Kelly? There we go. She's going to give you that, and that'll tell you, again, self-assessment of belt. That'll show you where you are, but this is a do on your own. And it'll show you where they believe. This is one organization's opinion. These are not facts. So if you're below the line or you're over the line, there's a saying, take it with a grain of salt. Don't value it, make use of it, think about it, utilize it. But this is not the end all or be all, because you could take this test tomorrow after a particularly great day or a particularly bummer day, and the results will be different. I assure you of that. And how about the next one? So an assessment score just reveals some characteristics that you can work on. It doesn't rule out the possibility that you can be a successful entrepreneur, because as I said before, these are generalizations of skill sets that have been observed in other successful entrepreneurs. But remember, for all of those, the successful ones, all of our stories were about those that had made it through, but all of them had challenges along the way. So what it doesn't measure is it doesn't measure the people that are right on the cusp, right on the edge of success. It doesn't measure them, and that can change the results. So for all of you, thank you for attending today. Thank you for your feedback, where you actually responded to the what I like to use the word hot words, meaning creative, adaptable, in the industry, spoke with a lot of others. Thank you for sending back your hot words, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Are there any questions you want to put on your chat box?
Yes, students, if you have questions, you can unmute or you can type them in the chat.
Yeah, look forward to having your input, particularly if you have a question about a particular idea that you might have, the one that you're sitting on.
And if there aren't any questions, then
Yep.
please feel free to take the next week to think about some of your ideas and then join us next Tuesday, same time, same place.
I'll be there. Look forward to
11th.
it. Look forward to it. Hope this was helpful in developing an entrepreneurial mindset.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Danielle.
Oh,
Thanks,
you
Kelly.
bet. All right,
Thanks.
see you.
Thanks, Teresa. Thanks, Letitia. Take care. Bye now.
We'll see you next week.